Well, it seems that the sad looking guy's name is John Wangle, and he comes from a town down in Georgia where his uncle is the high sheriff, and one of the bloodhounds' name is Nip, and the other is Tuck. And they are both trained from infancy to track down guys such as Lags, who escaped from the county pokey, and one thing and another. And after John Wangle gets the kinks out of his belly and Mindy steaks and starts talking good, you must either figure him a high class liar or the hounds, the greatest man trackers the world ever sees. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City, and tonight we are going to be doing a audio commentary for Bloodhounds of Broadway, starring Mitzi Gaynor and Scott Brady. This movie was released by 20th Century Fox in 1952. November of 52. It is Mitzi Gaynor's fifth movie for the studio. And basically, this is a musical based on the stories and slang of Damon Runyon, a very famous writer in the 30s and 40s that popularized, I guess you could say, gangster chic. I guess you could say, had a colorful way of writing wise guys and dialogue for that kind of thing and everything. I mean, he writes a lot of his characters with like funny names. Let's put it that way. So, but that's Damon Runyon in a nutshell. But at any rate, so we're going to be doing this commentary. This is Mitzi, like I said, Mitzi's fifth movie. But this is going to be the second commentary that I do, and as I stated last night I did a commentary for her other 1952 film, We're Not Married. And it was in the last segment where Mitzi Gaynor appeared that I revealed that I was going to be doing commentaries for all her films, all her 20th Century Fox films, and all her other films as well, including the ones that she made with Paramount. So this is going to be the second commentary that I do, and this is one of those films where she has a starring role. She is really, well, not the whole show. She's not the whole show in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of other talented people here who we will talk about that make up the supporting cast. But to be perfectly honest, out of the 17 films that Mitzi Gaynor made, this is one of my favorites. This is definitely in my top three, and I'm very, very excited to be talking with you about the movie. So anyway, I actually have the movie ready to go. I'm paused at the 20th Century Fox logo. And I'll just set this up here and give everybody just one more minute to get started here. But I'm on the 20th Century Fox logo right now, and I was going to double check this before I press play. Okay, and I had to double check. Unfortunately, Bloodhounds of Broadway is not available for streaming, at least on Amazon. So if you're going to watch the movie along with me and listen to the commentary, you're going to have to get a DVD, which of course is out of print. But for the last third of the movie, I will be sure to give a review of this DVD and encourage people to go and pick it up, because who knows how many copies of this is left out there. And I want to make sure that everybody with this commentary has a chance. If they want to get the DVD, now's your chance to get it before it's, well, I don't want to say gone forever, but at the same time, considering all of Mitzi's movies, especially the 20th Century Fox ones, are pretty much in limbo. So who knows if we will see any of these movies on physical media ever again. So, like I said, Bloodhounds of Broadway is only available on DVD. I am paused on the 20th Century Fox logo, and we will go ahead and get started here on the count of 3, 2, 1, and play. And I love how the spotlights around the 20th Century Fox logo are like different colors. There's there's pink and there's green, and then there's the the regular spotlights. And then we come upon Times Square and these gorgeous, gorgeous lights that are lighting up the city to start Bloodhounds of Broadway here. Yeah. When this opened, I just fell in love with that shot of Times Square immediately. But, this is a very, very colorful film. I mean, the cinematography for this film is very, very rich for 1952, extremely rich. But like I said before I pressed play, this is based on the stories of Damon Runyon. Although, to be perfectly honest, the story called Bloodhounds of Broadway is pretty much completely different than this movie. As a matter of fact, I mean, this is mostly concerned about the slang of Damon Runyon as opposed to any other stories of Damon Runyon. In fact, when I opened up the commentary, the quote I gave you was from the actual short story by Damon Runyon that he wrote in 1932 called Bloodhounds of Broadway. However, this movie has virtually nothing to do with that story. And also, to be perfectly honest, I was a little disappointed when I looked up the story. I didn't read a lot of it because it does unfortunately include racial slurs, which were prevalent at the time. But that might be part of the reason why Damon Runyon isn't really drawn to adaptations anymore, because this was this. I mean, there were a lot of Damon Runyon adaptations in the 30s and 40s. I mean, 20 approximately. And to be very honest, the very last one, Technicolor color consultant Leonard Doss worked on many Fox films at that time. But yeah, I was saying that the last Damon Runyon film we had was the remake of Bloodhounds of Broadway, which came out in 1989 with Matt Dillon and Madonna. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to watch that before starting this movie, but here we open up on this beautiful actress singing. This is Marguerite Chapman. Chapman is her name, and she plays the Moll Yvonne Dugan. And coming down the stairs here is, in fact, the owner of the club, known as Dave the Dude. Yeah, so this club is called Dave the Dudes, and this is Dave right here. I know I'm looking for his name real quick. Henry Slate. Yeah, Henry Slate is the actor's name. But this is Marguerite Chapman singing You Send Me. Okay. And I was trying to, when I first saw this movie, I was thinking, this is another one of those instances where I know I've seen that face before. And here again, I was racking my brain the first time I saw this. I was like, I know I saw her in other films. I can't think of what they are at the moment. Well, as a matter of fact, this was actually one of her very last movies. I mean, she did a lot of television in the 1950s. But this was one of her very last movies, Marguerite Chapman, excuse me. And it was right after this that she made her very last movie for Fox called The 7-Year Itch, the Marilyn Monroe picture. And it was then I realized, she was the secretary, Miss Morris, who comes on to Tom Ewell in his little fantasy in his fantasies. One of the women that lunges at him is his own secretary, played by Marguerite Chapman right here. But aside from that, her last film role would actually not be until 1960, called the Amazing Transparent Man, where she was actually the star of that. But she was born in Chatham, New York, and she worked as a telephone switchboard operator in White Plains. And her good looks brought about the opportunity to pursue a career in modeling. She signed with the John Robert Powers Agency in New York City, and she modeled in product advertisements that ran nationally. She signed with 20th Century Fox, moved to Hollywood in late 1939. So yeah, this is 1952. So this is like 13 years after she had signed with Fox. She went on to be placed under contract with Warner Brothers in 1941, and then with in Columbia from 1942 to 1948. She made her film debut in 1940, working for the next 2 years in small roles. In 1942, her big break came with Republic Pictures when she was cast in the leading female role in the 12-part adventure film serial Spy Smasher, a production that has been ranked among the best serials ever made. Chapman soon began receiving more leading roles and appeared opposite important stars such as Edward G. Robinson and George Sanders. With America's entry into World War II, she entertained the troops, worked for the war bond drive, and at the Hollywood Canteen. She also starred in the famous pro-Soviet war film Counterattack, released in 1945. Now, there's some familiar faces in this movie. I mean, here again, when I first saw this, and I first saw this about 4 or 5 years ago, because what started this whole project in the first place was I noticed that Mitzi Gaynor was very active on Twitter, now known as X, but I'm still going to refer to it as Twitter. I don't care. But yeah, she's very, very active on Twitter and still is, as a matter of fact. And I said to myself, you know what? I've never seen any of her films, not even South Pacific, even though my parents grew up with South Pacific. And my grandparents, I know, loved the movie as well. And they even had the James Michener book and everything. But I had never seen it. It was probably like one of like 500 movies growing up. One of like 5 movies in a library of like 500, and I never saw it. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to check out all of Mitzi's movies. So I decided to start from the very beginning, and I watched My Blue Heaven in 1950, and I watched all 17 of the films that she was in up until 1963 in For Love or Money, starring Kirk Douglas, which is probably the worst film that she was in her entire library. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Now, the biggest surprise when I saw Bloodhounds of Broadway was actually Mitzi's co-star, who is right here, the gentleman on the right, Scott Brady. He's actually in one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life, which is, of course, The China Syndrome in 1979. But in fact, it was back in the 1950s that he had some leading man roles, including here at 20th Century Fox. Now, but this scene right here, where we get to know where we get to know his bookie gang, his little gang of bookies that have the horse races and do all that stuff. I mean, and of course they're being investigated by authorities, and all that, and they're getting close. I mean, the cops want to tear apart the syndicate really, really badly. And so right here, they're interrogating his mall, Marguerite Chapman. And if you noticed before, there was a guy that kept on saying, "I don't remember." That's actor Henry Corden. And even though in the cast list, his name is Sully Bennett. I mean, everybody in this movie basically has like a Runyon-esque nickname or some kind of, Scott Brady is known as Numbers, even though his real name is Robert Forster. Wally Vernon plays Harry Samus, although he's known as Poorly. And even though Sully Bennett did not have a nickname, I decided to call him Sully. I don't remember Bennett, because basically his instructions were to say answer every question with, "I don't remember." What was your tax return last year? I don't remember. What did you make in profit? I don't remember. Yeah, yeah. A way to make it really, really obvious that you're a little crooked there. And right here is Mitzi Green. We have another Mitzi in this movie, so we get 2 Mitzies for the price of 1. How about that? Mitzi Green. This was her very last movie, and she plays who you just saw her sitting there and everything. She is part of the circle as well, and all these guys are actually part of the circle. Mitzi Green plays 52nd Tessie Samus, who is basically Harry's I forget it, wife or sister, I forget. But there's Wally Vernon right there in the blue jacket and the red scarf and the and the hat right there. And so yeah, and Scott Brady is escorting him out. And also in that scene, we also had Frankie Ferraccio, played by Ralph Volke. Edwin Max as Lookout Louis Larchmont. Yeah, these are all the character names, seriously. And Charles Bukinski as Pittsburgh Philo Green. And we'll see them pop up throughout the course of the movie and in different scenes. Some of them with a fair amount of dialogue. But of course, here we have Scott Brady and Wally Vernon, who are going to get out of town here now. And as you can see, Scott Brady, he's very good at mathematics. He's asking Wally Vernon right here, keep giving me numbers, give me multiplication, division, I'll figure it out. And he's like a human calculator basically. And well, that's why the people call him Numbers, is that he's able to do all these numbers very, very quickly. I guess being a bookie, you would need to have good math skills. But if you're a human calculator, I think that's even better, because you can calculate everything in record time, I guess. So I read part of the Damon Runyon story. Of course, it took me a while to remember that apparently the most famous of all Runyon stories that made it to film was actually Guys and Dolls, the 1955 musical with Marlon Brando, which became one of the biggest of the 1950s. Now, to be perfectly honest, TriStar Pictures, I read recently that TriStar Pictures has been kind of more or less attempting to remake Guys and Dolls. I mean, and here again, since the 1989 remake of Bloodhounds of Broadway, nobody has tried to go back to Damon Runyon, even though, I mean, when I was growing up, I read so many reviews that used the word Runyon-esque. It's not even funny, seriously. And so they get stuck in the state of Georgia in escaping New York City for a while. Yeah, they're out of gas in the middle of Georgia. They have no idea where they are. And it's going to be here in just a minute where we meet our star of the movie, who, of course, is Mitzi Gaynor. And as I said before, this was her 5th movie for 20th Century Fox after My Blue Heaven, Take Care of My Little Girl, Golden Girl, and We're Not Married. And like I said, I just did We're Not Married last night. That commentary is now available. And, she's in that very, very little. She doesn't, it's an anthology, and she doesn't appear until the very last segment with Eddie Bracken and even an unbilled Lee Marvin. And there's a couple of other people here that are unbilled as well that I'll be very excited to point out and talk about. But here is, in fact, Mitzi Gaynor in all her glory right here, singing In the Sweet By and By in honor of her grandpap, who just passed away. And as you can see, Scott Brady, like the prince in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, is completely entranced by this lovely, lovely girl with pigtails, singing this melody. I like how Vernon is like, yeah, okay, I'll take off my hat too. But if I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, Mitzi was 27. Oh, no, 21. Excuse me. Yeah, she had just turned 21 when this movie came out in November of 1952. and she had learned dancing from a very young age. She actually won a competition when she was 6. Yeah, she had already learned, tap dancing and ballet and everything. I mean, she really learned dancing very, very quickly, and of course, she learned how to sing and everything. And she was already on the stage for like 5 years before she was picked out by an agent and said, would you like to be in the movies? And she ended up under contract at Fox, where she started making movies like My Blue Heaven. And she started out in a movie with, of course, the lady with the $1 million legs. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But she's just absolutely adorable right here, and those are, of course, her titular bloodhounds, who are, of course, going to be the Bloodhounds of Broadway. But it's funny. I kind of think that the title might, in fact, have a dual meaning, in that not only obviously there are bloodhounds there are dogs, but I kind of think of these guys as bloodhounds too. I mean, bloodhounds in terms of getting money illicitly and everything. In a way, they kind of are. And unfortunately, they say later that they left their guns in the car, so unfortunately, they're not packing to take care of this guy. This is actor Timothy Carey as Crockett Pace, who I think has been, waiting around, many, many years to marry her. It's like, oh, there's a young man talking to her. Oh, I better get my gun, man. This can't be happening. Now, I need to talk about. I think this is the perfect time to bring up the whole thing about the Mitzi's dogs, the Bloodhounds. Apparently, they're named Nip and Tuck, and I started to my brain started to rack a bit. Now, wait a minute, what is that? I mean, I know there was a show called Nip Tuck about, I think, plastic surgery that came out like 20 years ago or something. And I was thinking, wait a minute, did they name these dogs after facelifts, like plastic surgery? And because I started to think, now wait a minute, I mean, was this term even used? No, 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 no. In plastic surgery, I mean, they've been doing this since like the 1900s. But then I did a little bit more digging. I did a little bit more digging here. And I realized that the first known usage of nip and tuck comes from the Arkansas Times and Advocate in August of 1838. Quote, "It will be a close race in this county, Tully and Cummins, nip and tuck, and I don't know which will have it." So in actuality, there is another definition for nip and tuck, which is basically inconclusive as to an outcome, close or just even in a race or comparison or competition. Example, the election was a nip and tuck affair, head to head, neck and neck, inconclusive, not putting an end to doubt or question. You get the idea. And to me, that definition makes a lot more sense, considering, the fact that this movie is about gambling and about, fixed horse racing and that kind of thing. So I think that definition makes a lot more sense. But I mean, that would be an interesting question if I ever had the opportunity to meet the writer. I would ask him, now wait a minute, were you referring to nip and tuck in terms of plastic surgery, or are you referring to nip and tuck in terms of being inconclusive to an outcome? But I'd like to think it was the latter. Now, this lovely little lady right here, her name is Sharon Baird, as Little Alida, who is Mitzi Gaynor's friend in this movie. And even though this is her only scene, in the entire movie, the truth of the matter is that she really steals this entire scene, and she really holds her own, dancing with Mitzi Gaynor right here. And as a matter of fact, and I will describe it later, but she's even interviewed on the old 20th Century Fox DVD. And yeah, so I mean, she she really impresses with her dancing right here. Let's put it this way. I mean, she does it. She does the this dance as fast as she can. And in the featurette, she even talks about how Fox asked her, like, "Do you have any special moves?" And so she does. So she does like these crane kicks, which you'll see here in just a minute. But this song right here is "Buy Low" by Elliot Daniel, and all the songs here in this movie are staged by Robert Sidney. And of course, this number is made even more delightful by the fact that the phonograph record keeps on skipping and everything. So yeah, here Sharon Baird is going in terms of this dance, and yeah, see how she kicks up her left leg right there. That's a special that's basically what she decided to contribute to the entire dance right here. And it's kind of a shame that she kind of disappears. I mean, we don't see her again after we leave Georgia here. And I already know I made my first mistake. I believe it was actually Sharon Baird that won that dance competition when she was 6, and it wasn't Mitzi. I do apologize about that, but that just clicked in my mind here. But anyway, that's one of many musical numbers in this movie, and I actually like almost every single number. I mean, there's not really a number that I think fails or um, screws up or feels out of place or anything like that. I mean, all the numbers in this movie are a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun, and of course, with Mitzi Gaynor flashing that dazzling smile of hers, which she does in all of her movies, it just makes it all the more wonderful. And this is an actor by the name of Bill Walker as Uncle Old Fella right here. Yeah, Bill Walker is best remembered for his role as Reverend Sykes in the 1962 classic To Kill a Mockingbird. He was born in Indiana, and he appeared in numerous television shows and films, including Raintree County, Official Detective, The Amos and Andy Show, Twilight Zone, Rawhide, Daniel Boone, Good Times, Big Jake, What's Happening, The President's Plane is Missing, Our Man Flint, and he was also in the 1961 film The Mask, not to be confused with the Twilight Zone episode The Masks from 1964, in which he appeared uncredited. And his first, in fact, his first role in a movie uncredited was in the 1946 film The Killers, based on the Ernest Hemingway story. And he was also in Carson City, Bad Boy 1949, Africa Screams, which is the Abbott and Costello movie, Bomba on Panther Island, Francis Goes to the Races, about the talking mule, Angels in the Outfield, he played a waiter. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of his roles are like waiters, train porters, because unfortunately they very offensively limited roles for African Americans at that time. Very, very sad. And like I said, we only see him for just a minute here, but thankfully he was able to do To Kill a Mockingbird later, and has a significant role there, so he's in a classic. But he was also in the I Don't Care Girl, which is another movie that Mitzi made a year later in 1953 for Fox, where he plays a cook. in that movie. So I'll try to point him out again when we see him in that movie. But he was also in A Kiss Before Dying in 1956, Porgy and Bess, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, played a chauffeur. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of these are like bartenders, chauffeurs, attendants, delivery men, that kind of thing. I mean, luckily he has To Kill a Mockingbird on his resume. And his last movie was actually an uncredited voice role in The Wiz, based on the musical. He was in the adult choir for that. Mm-hmm. Now, the director of Bloodhounds of Broadway is a man by the name of Harmon Jones. And to be very perfectly honest, I've never heard this director's name in my life, but he was a Canadian born editor and director who worked for many years at 20th Century Fox. And he's credited as editor for about 20 feature films through 1950. In the middle of his career, he became a director. And between 1951 and 69, he directed about 15 feature films, as well as dozens of episodes of popular television series of the 50s and 60s. There's see. Between 1944 and 1951, Harmon Jones is credited as the editor for more than 20 feature films. Hal Erickson has called him, quote, one of the leading lights of the 20th Century Fox film editing department. John Gallagher noted that studio chief Daryl F. Zanuck was himself a brilliant editor and maintained the best editorial department in Hollywood. Jones's credits include 4 of the earlier films directed by Elia Kazan, including the 1947 Best Picture winner Gentleman's Agreement. His last credit as an editor is for the 1950 film Stella, and then he became a director. As Erickson described it, quote, Jones graduated to the director's chair with the Monty Woolley vehicle As Long as You Feel in 1951, which featured up-and-coming Marilyn Monroe. His first directorial project showed promise, especially his brace of baseball pictures, such as Pride of St. Louis in 1952 and The Kid from Left Field in 1953. Soon, however, Jones was churning out routine westerns and so-so costume flicks. Some recent critics do not agree. Thus, Toby Rohn has written, quote, Harmon Jones didn't direct many features before heading to television. His 5 westerns, The Silver Whip, City of Bad Men, A Day of Fury, Canyon River, and Bullwhip, are perfect examples of what a medium-budget studio western could be. A Day of Fury is a fantastic film, one of the best westerns to come out of Universal in the 50s, and that's saying something. If Jones had made more westerns, I'm sure we'd be grouping him with directors like George Sherman, Gordon Douglas, and Phil Carlson. Jones apparently left 20th Century Fox in 1954, 2 years after Bloodhounds of Broadway came out. His 1955 film Target Zero was produced by Warner Brothers, and Day of Fury 1956 was from Universal. In 1957, Jones began directing episodes of several popular TV series such as Perry Mason, Rawhide, and Death Valley Days. His last credits are from 1969, and Jones's editing of Gentleman's Agreement was nominated for an Academy Award. Jones was the father of Robert C. Jones and the grandfather of Leslie Jones, both of whom are film editors who have also been nominated for Academy Awards. The editor for Jones's last feature film, Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title, was in fact his son, Robert C. Jones. And he also edited Anna and the King of Siam in 1946, which of course later became The King and I. And of course, what's funny is that The King and I, if I remember correctly, is the only one of all of the Rodgers and Hammerstein films to actually be remade in some fashion. I may be wrong on that. I know there's several versions of Carousel and State Fair, but as far as like modern day remakes, oh yeah, for some reason Fox never got around to remaking any of the Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, but we'll talk about that during South Pacific. At any rate, so Harmon Jones also edited Mr. Belvedere Goes to College and Sitting Pretty, about the famous character Mr. Belvedere, which later became a sitcom in the 1980s. And as a director, he also did City of Bad Men, Gorilla at Large, Princess of the Nile, Canyon River, The Beast of Budapest, and Wolf Larson. And like I said, his last film was in 1966 called Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title. Mm-hmm. So it's now back to New York City as we leave Georgia behind. Yep. I love the fact earlier when they were talking to her about Madison Square Garden, and she was thinking, oh, I wonder what they grow there. Oh, they grow lots of wonderful things. Yes, indeed. But I mean, Mitzi Gaynor is just a delight in this movie. She is an absolute delight. I mean, she has, of course, she has that, that Southern twang thing perfectly down. But just in every scene, she's just almost like bouncing along, just enjoying the spotlight, enjoying, working and playing this character. I mean, it looks like she's really, truly having a lot of fun. And of course, she said that she had practically nothing but kind words about working at the Fox studio, in the early 1950s. In fact, there's a whole featurette devoted to her in an interview, which is on this DVD as well, which is good because outside of South Pacific, there's not many of her films available on physical media, and even less where it actually includes her in terms of an interview or a commentary or something like that. Now we were going to talk about Mitzi Green, although she's going to be back a little bit later. So, yeah, there she is right there. Let me go ahead and get Wally Vernon as Poorly out of the way, though. Let me go ahead and knock him out. There he is. He gets very, very attached to the dogs, as you can see. But he was born in New York City in 1905, and he was in show business from the age of 3, appearing in vaudeville and stock theater. And he made his first Hollywood appearance in the 1937 film Mountain Music. He made more than 75 films, almost always playing a Brooklynese wise guy or the hero's assistant. He was a fixture in 20th Century Fox features of the late 30s and the early 40s. Vernon is seen as an eccentric dancer in Fox's Alexander Ragtime Band in 1938, where he appears as himself. Vernon freelanced at other studios after leaving Fox, and he became the sidekick to cowboy star Don Red Barry at Republic Pictures. And when Barry began producing his own features in 1949, he remembered Vernon and brought him back as his sidekick. In 1948, Columbia Pictures producer Jules White paired Vernon with Eddie Quillian, another comedian with vaudeville background. White emphasized physical comedy in films, and Vernon and Quillian indulged in pratfalling, headbanging, kick-in-the-pants slapstick, and the Vernon and Quillian comedies were favorites of White, who kept making them through 1956. Jules White, by the way, is most famous for working with the Stooges and directing a lot of their shorts for Columbia. In 1961, Wally Vernon appeared as a bartender in the TV Western series Bat Masterson. But his other films include Submarine D1, Meet the Girls, Broadway Serenade, The Gorilla, Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, Sailor's Lady, Sandy Gets Her Man, Reveille with Beverly. I like the name of that one. Canyon City, Pistol Packin' Mama, California Joe, Outlaws of Santa Fe, Called the South Seas. All those films. Not any real big ones. Not any ones that really stand out, though. And Bloodhounds of Broadway was one of his last films. As a matter of fact, his very last film was the 20th Century Fox production, What a Way to Go, which was originally intended for Marilyn Monroe. However, Shirley MacLaine ended up playing the role in that. And Wally Vernon's last role in that is actually he plays an agent. Uh-huh. Now, this actor right here, who plays Inspector McNamara, this is an actor by the name of Michael O'Shea. All right, and I'll bring him up real quick. Yeah, Michael O'Shea is Inspector McNamara. Uh, see, he dropped out of school at the age of 12 and began his acting career in vaudeville by touring with boxing idol Jack Johnson's show. He did a variety of jobs, including soda jerk, bricklayer, private detective, and bodyguard. He played drums on the banjo, much like his character from Lady of Burlesque in 1943. O'Shea was a comedian and MC at speakeasies. He put together his own dance band, Michael O'Shea and his Stationary Gypsies, and later broke into radio and the legitimate stage, where he was billed for a time as Eddie O'Shea. He worked on radio shows such as Superman, Mr. District Attorney, and The March of Time and Gangbuster. He received acclaim for his performance in the 1942 play The Eve of St. Mark, and the play was a hit, and the film producers began approaching O'Shea to do screen tests. He was asked to reprise his stage role in Jack London in the film version of The Eve of St. Mark, produced by 20th Century Fox, and the studio contracted him to make 2 more films. Fox announced they would make Where Do We Go From Here with him and Stanley Prager, also in Eve, but it appears to have been made. And we'll see him a bit later. But I must emphasize, we'll see Michael O'Shea again in the role of the detective, but I must go ahead and point out, even though he doesn't have a lot of lines. Now, if you see the gentleman standing in the background there in front of the curtain with the hat on, just, standing there, all gruff and everything. Well, that is an actor by the name of Charles Bukinski, who plays Pittsburgh Philo Green. There he is right there between Vernon and Marguerite. And in case you don't recognize him by now, that is in fact Charles Bronson. In one of his very, very, very first roles, Charles Bronson himself. Yeah, Mr. Deathwish. Yeah, and he actually has a few lines in this movie. He actually maybe has 3 or 4 lines, maybe, and and this is what he played early in his career. He played thugs, and these kind of roles. Although in this movie, he's actually a particularly kind of nice thug. When I finished this movie, I said to myself, the only thing that could have made this movie better is if Charles Bukinski had killed somebody. The only thing that would have made Bloodhounds of Broadway better is if Charles Bukinski had killed somebody. But at any rate, so looking at his filmography here real quick, his first 3 movies were all uncredited in 1951, and they included The Mob, You're in the Navy Now, and The People Against O'Hara. In 1952, he also had roles in Pat and Mike. That's one of the films that had Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. He was also in Diplomatic Courier, My Six Convicts, The Marrying Kind, Red Skies of Montana, and Battle Zone, in addition to Bloodhounds of Broadway as Pittsburgh Philo Green. Oh, by the way, there's a lot of green in this movie. I mean, there's Mitzi Green, and then Mitzi Gaynor is going to be wearing a green outfit in one of the scenes that she dances with the other Mitzi Green and everything. It gets a little confusing with all these names. I mean, it's incredible. But I wanted to say a hi to a few people in the chat real quick. Hey, John, how you doing? Saw Mitzi in Vegas in 2012. She was very charming and told some great stories. The success of South Pacific did not lead to a career resurgence and closed the door on her film career. Yes, that's very true. Thank God for TV. Yes, when I do my commentary for Love or Money, and John and I are probably the only ones on the planet to have seen For Love or Money. When I do that commentary, I'll be talking all about Mitzi's post-film career on the stage as well as television, because that movie is so long, and I don't and believe me, trying to think of things to talk about with that one, it isn't easy. But I'm going to be talking all about Mitzi Gaynor's post-screen career when I do For Love or Money. Hey, Zachary, how you doing? Long time no see. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the trailer for Saltburn yet? I can't believe how gorgeous the cinematography is. No, I'll be sure to keep that in mind, though. Thank you for letting me know that. Mm-hmm. But we are at the 40-minute mark of Bloodhounds of Broadway here. And here's what I'm talking about. There's Mitzi Green. And then here's Mitzi Gaynor wearing all green. Even the shoes are green. I mean, the shirt and the pants and everything. I mean, the shoes, she's wearing all green. She even has a thing in her hair that's green. I mean, I'm just wondering if this was some kind of like inside joke. I mean, Mitzi Green is not wearing green, but the other Mitzi is wearing green. Okay, I'm not gonna go down this road anymore. But now this guy right here, this is an actor by the name of Richard Allen, and he has the colorful nickname of Curtain Time Charlie. Yeah, there's another Runyon-esque name for you. See, I mean, this is just effortless right here. I mean, it's almost like, I mean, watching Mitzi right here, it's almost like she never rehearsed this at all. It's perfect. Her dancing in this movie and in many other movies that she made is just, pitch perfect, spot on, Yeah, I mean, she's amazing. She really is. And of course, the song that they're singing here, if I remember correctly, I've got a feeling you're fooling. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Actually, I could just cheat a little bit here.
From your eyes, I got a feeling you're fooling.
Yep, I was right. I got a feeling you're fooling. Yep. That's the song, music by Nacho Herb Brown, lyrics by Arthur Freed. And they were also responsible for the opening over the title sequence, that Broadway rhythm. Yeah, he also was responsible for that song as well. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoy this as a musical. And, here again, like I said, when I do my ranking of all the Mitzi Gaynor movies next week, this is going to be near the top. Very, very close to the top. Mm-hmm. Now, let me go ahead and talk about Mitzi Green real quick. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk about her now. But she was born in October of 1920 and was an American child actress and singer for Paramount Pictures and RKO. In the early talkies, she then acted on Broadway and other stage works as well as films and television. She was often featured in Paramount's early talkies as an outspoken and mischievous little girl along studio stars Clara Bow, Jack Oakey, Ed Wynn, Leon Errol, and Edna Mae Oliver, among others. Green was a gifted mimic, and her celebrity imitations were often worked into her films. She was cast against type opposite Jackie Coogan in two Mark Twain adaptations, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Paramount released her in 1931 as she was rapidly outgrowing child roles. She moved to RKO for two pictures, both adaptations of works from other media. She played the title role in Little Orphan Annie, 1932, based on the popular comic strip, and with Edgar Kennedy and Daddy Warbucks. She also appeared as the precious kid sister in Girl Crazy, 1932, the first movie version of the George Gershwin, Ira Gershwin stage musical. Green brightened the film with surprising impersonations of George Arliss and her former co-star Edna Mae Oliver. At the age of 14, she played a soubrette role in Transatlantic Merry-Go-Round, produced independently by Edward Small and for United Artists. Now, this scene right here was actually in some of the promotional material where, it was like, it would be very clever, with the pictures and be like, oh yeah, Scott Brady is waking up surprised and Mitzi Green is standing before him, very happy and everything, just being the slightest bit suggestive, maybe. And of course, the bloodhounds are eating all the eggs that she ordered. How sweet. How sweet. Here's another Dynamite costume that she's wearing. And see, now look at that. Like the curtain changed to purple. There's purple and green curtains. And now she's wearing more green. She wears a lot of green in this movie. I was like, I mean, was this a joke? Was this a joke that she was having with the other Mitzi? I can't quite figure that out. But there's a lot of green and a lot of purple. There's a lot of green and a lot of purple in this movie. And like I said, I mean, this Leonard Dawson, the Technicolor at the time was just extraordinary. But going back to Mitzi Green, she made one more film in 1940, which was Santa Fe Trail with Errol Flynn. Then went back to stage and nightclub work, including Walk with Music by Hoagie Carmichael and Johnny Mercer, and the Betty Comden Adolph Green musical Billion Dollar Baby. Green married Broadway and later movie and TV director Joseph Pevney and retired to raise a family. At age 31, she returned briefly to the screen opposite Abbott and Costello in Lost in Alaska in 1952, which came out the same year as Bloodhounds of Broadway. In 1955, she starred with Virginia Gibson and Gordon Jones in the short-lived NBC TV sitcom So This Is Hollywood in the role of Queenie Dugan, a high-spirited stunt woman. After a brief stint on the nightclub circuit, Green retired again, although she did appear in summer stock and dinner theater around the LA areas thereafter, and she appeared occasionally as a guest on talk shows. She passed away very young at the age of 48 due to cancer in 1969. Yeah, see, here's Charles Berkowitz. No. That wasn't his last name. What is it? I already forgot. Forget it. Charles Bukinski. Yeah, thank you. But yeah, he actually has about 3 or 4 lines in this movie when you add them all up. Now, as for Scott Brady, the one main actor who we haven't talked about yet, he was born in 1924, passed away in 1985 at the age of 60. So in China Syndrome, he was 54, but he looked a lot older. Yeah, he looked a lot older, and unfortunately, I think it was due to smoking. He's lighting up right here. He smokes a lot of cigarettes in this movie, and in the China Syndrome, he always has a cigar in his mouth. So unfortunately, he died of respiratory failure. Yeah, makes sense, at the age of 60 in 1985. But his father was an Irish-American policeman, was chief of New York City Aqueduct Police Force. His older and younger brothers were fellow actors Lawrence and Edward Tierney. Yeah, Lawrence Tierney. He took his screen name from a French short story in which the hero, a boxer, was named Scott Brady. But he was born Gerard Tierney in 1924. He was reared in suburban Westchester County, New York, nicknamed Roddy in his youth. And he attended Roosevelt and St. Michael's high schools, where he lettered in basketball, football, and track. He aspired to become a football coach for a radio announcer, but instead enlisted in the United States Navy, so like he's a fellow sailor. Before his graduation from high school, during World War II, he served as a naval aviation mechanic overseas on the USS Norton Sound. I bet he had a lot of stories to tell on set about that experience. Discharged in 1946, Brady headed to L.A., where his older brother Lawrence was already making some progress as an actor. First taking menial jobs as a cab driver and as a lumberjack, Brady studied at the Beverly Hills Drama School under the GI Bill of Rights. There, he studied acting and took vocal training to eliminate his thick Brooklyn accent. In 1948, Brady made his film debut as a boxer in The Programmer in This Corner and took tough guy roles in films like He Walked by Night, Undertow, and Cannon City. He was the leading man in the romantic comedy The Model and The Marriage Broker, and in the cult Western drama Johnny Guitar. From 1953 to 1956, Brady appeared 4 times in different roles on Lux Video Theater and appeared 5 times on the Ford Television Theater. In 1955, he portrayed Ted Slater in Man in the Ring of the Loretta Young Show. And in 1955 and 57, Brady appeared twice on Studio 57. Early in 57, he was cast in The Barbed Wire Preacher of Crossroads. And also in 1957, he played the frontier figure William Bent in the episode Lone Woman on Playhouse 90. From 1955 to 59, he appeared 5 times on Schlitz Playhouse, including the roles of Reno Cromwell and Calvin Penny in Night of the Big Swamp and Papa Said No, respectively. And see, in 1958, he played the lead role of Sergeant Matt Blake in Ambush at Cimarron Pass. He dated a number of actresses in Hollywood during this period, including Kip Hamilton, Carol Omart, Rico Sato, and Shelley Winters. In 1961, he played the roles of John Keller in We're Holding Your Son on General Electric Theater and Ernie Taggart in Voyage into Fear on Checkmate. In 1962, Brady was cast in the lead guest role as reporter-commentator Floyd Gibbons in the Floyd Gibbons story on The Untouchables. The next year, he portrayed Bill Floyd in the episode Run for Doom on the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. During the mid-60s, Brady starred in several A.C. Lyle's Western films, Bud Blake in the episode Panic of Bracken's World, and he also appeared on Adam 12, Banachek, and Police Story. In 1977, he appeared as Shirley Feeney's father, Jack Feeney, on Laverne and Shirley. And though he had turned down the role of Archie Bunker on All in the Family, Brady appeared as Joe Foley on 4 episodes in 1976. He appeared 5 times on The Rockford Files. 1977, he portrayed Lou Caruso in Caruso's Way of Welcome Back, Kotter, and appeared as Matt Zaleski, in the TV miniseries Wheels the following year. Finally, he portrayed Captain Schofield in the 1981 made-for-TV film McLean's Law. In 1983, Brady portrayed Alex Kidd in Shadow of Sam Penny on Simon & Simon, and his last acting role was as Sheriff Frank Riley in the 1984 film Gremlins. Yes, I forgot about that. Oh my God. Yeah, he was on the commentary. Joe Dante talks about how Scott Brady was having trouble getting up the stairs to the sheriff's office because he was on he made a movie in the 50s that was in some kind of mine where he died of respiratory failure. He had a respirator when he went to go see to the premiere of Gremlins. So I forget an asbestos mine. That's what it is. He apparently was exposed to asbestos in a mine when he was working on a film in the 50s, and that cut his life short very, very dramatically. Very, very sad. But he passed away at the age of 60 in 1985. But hey, look. To be in films like The China Syndrome and then Gremlins, that's still pretty damn good. That's still pretty damn good if you ask me. Other films he made were 3 Steps to the Gallows, The Law versus Billy the Kid, where he actually did play Billy the Kid, Terror at Midnight, The Restless Breed, Blood Arrow, Black Spurs, Red Tomahawk, 5 Bloody Graves, Marooned. He played a public affairs officer in the 1969 Boarfest Marooned with Gene Hackman and Gregory Peck. Yeah, that's right. And the China Syndrome was his 4th to last movie where he played Herman DeYoung. And he was also in Strange Behavior, this 1981 slasher film, which was co-written by Bill Condon and starring Michael Murphy and Louise Fletcher. Oh, yeah. So, but yeah, the fact that his last role was as the sheriff in Gremlins, I mean, That's pretty cool. That is really cool, actually. I completely forgot about that. And I'm glad that Joe Dante talks about him on both commentaries and just doesn't limit it to one. But yeah, I mean, yeah, very, very, very sad what ultimately happened to Scott Brady and how his career was cut short because of working in this asbestos mine when he was working on a film in the 50s. Okay, so we are approximately 55 minutes. We are approximately 55 minutes into Bloodhounds of Broadway, and we have approximately 35 minutes left to go. And as I said before, this film is it borrows the title from the Damon Runyon story from 1931, but of course doesn't really. Uh, it has nothing to do with the story, pretty much at all. I mean, the story that was published in Collier's in 1931. And this film was written by Cy Gomberg, Oscar-nominated film screenwriter, producer, and activist who taught screenwriting at University of Southern California students for decades. He was born in New York City, grew up in Newark, New Jersey, spent World War II in the first motion picture unit in Hollywood, and after the war, he was a contributor to Collier's Weekly and the Saturday Evening Post. In 1951, he received the Academy Award nomination for When Willie Comes Marching Home, which was based on a story Gomberg originally wrote for Collier's. He also was nominated the same year for Best Screenplay for Summer Stock, and he also created, produced, and wrote the 1960s ABC legal drama The Law and Mr. Jones, starring James Whitmore. A supporter of the American Civil Liberties Union, Gomberg organized members of the film industry to march with Martin Luther King Jr. in Alabama. And in 1957, Gomberg married actress Maxine Cooper, and they remained together until his death at age 82 in Brentwood, California. His wife had one son from her previous marriage, and they had two daughters together. And the other films that he wrote include The Toast of New Orleans, Kathy O, Step Down to Terror, The Wild and the Innocent, Breakout, Three Warriors, and The Ghosts of Buxley Hall in 1980. Vacation, and on television, he also did episodes of The Magical World of Disney and Small Wonder. Mm-hmm. And the adaptation of this movie was done by Albert Mannheimer, another writer who also was nominated for Born Yesterday. Screenplay received Writers Guild of America Award for Best Written American Comedy. And I'm trying not to be distracted by Mitzi's legs here, but it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard not to be distracted by them right here. This number that she's that she's singing right here, I believe, is 8 Miles Out of Atlanta. And right after this, she'll be singing I Wish I Knew. And yeah, so, a couple of great back-to-back musical numbers where, Mitzi just kills it. And and I love how the dogs are just like chilling on stage. They're like, whatever. And Bloodhounds of Broadway was, of course, produced by George Jessel, who also produced two other Mitzi Gaynor movies, The I Don't Care Girl, as well as Golden Girl, which we'll talk about a bit later. But the producer, George Jessel, he started out in vaudeville. His most famous comedy skit was called Hello Mama, or Phone Call from Mama, which portrayed a one-sided telephone conversation. In 1919, he produced his own solo show, George Jessel's Troubles. He also co-wrote the lyrics for a hit tune, Oh, How I Laugh When I Think of How I Cried About You, and he performed in several successful comedy stage shows in the 1920s. In 1921, he recorded a hit single, The Toastmaster, and appeared in his first motion picture, the silent movie The Other Man's Wife. So the producer actually started out as an actor. In 1924, he appeared in a brief comedy sketch in a short film made in the DeForest Phonofilm Sound on Film process. In 1925, he emerged as one of the most popular leading men on Broadway with a starring role in the stage production of The Jazz Singer. The success of the show prompted Warner Brothers, after their success with Don Juan with music and sound effects only, to adapt The Jazz Singer as the very first talkie with dialogue and to cast Jessel in the lead role. However, the studio refused his salary demands, so Jessel turned down the movie role, which was eventually played by Al Jolson. According to Jessel during an interview around 1980, which ironically enough was the same year that the Jazz Singer remake with Neil Diamond came out, Warner Brothers still owed Jessel money for earlier roles and lacked enough funds to produce this movie with a leading star. Jolson, the biographical inspiration for the movie, became the movie's main financial backer. Jessel's next movie role was in Private Izzy Murphy in 1926. Whereas Jolson's film career skyrocketed after The Jazz Singer, Jessel remained in smaller movie roles, often intended for audiences fond of Jewish and other ethnic humor. He was elected to the Lambs Theater Club in 1942. And in the middle of the 1940s, he began producing musicals for 20th Century Fox, producing 24 films in all in a career that lasted through the 1950s and 1960s. For his good, at the same time, he became known as a host on the banquet circuit, famous for his good-natured wit aimed at his fellow celebrities. In 1946, he was one of the founding members of the California branch of the Friars Club. A recording exists of an example of his, quote, blue work in front of a stag audience, although it was actually recorded at a roast hosted by the Friars' rival, the Masquers Club. He also traveled widely overseas with the USO, entertaining troops. As he grew older, he wrote eulogies for many of his contemporaries in Hollywood, and he wrote 3 volumes of memoirs, So Help Me, This Way Miss, and The World I Lived In. And like I said, because George Jessel produced a couple more films in Mitzi's filmography, we are going to talk about more about him in one of those other films. But as you can see, I mean, this is another wonderful number right here, which is I Wish I Knew. And just look at the blue curtain in the background there. And just, you know, the costumes are lovely. The curtain is perfect. I mean, you could see the actors' reflections when they're dancing on stage here. It's just wonderful. It's just really wonderful. The cinematography is actually credited to a man named Edward Cron Jaeger. He came from a family of cinematographers. His father, uncle, and brother all worked in the film industry behind the camera. His work covered over 100 films and included projects on the small screen towards the end of his career. He filmed in black and white and color mediums, and his work received nominations for 7 Oscar nods. 7 Oscar nominations over the course of his career over 3 decades, but he never won. He never won. He was the preferred director of photography of early film star Richard Dix and served on AMPAS committees, as well as being selected by the American Society of Cinematographers to test new types of film stock. He also pioneered several new techniques and types of cinematography, developing new camera angles in the 1920s, working on one of the earliest film noirs in the 40s, using CinemaScope and underwater photography in the 1950s. I believe one of those first films was, in fact, Dangerous When Wet, which was the Esther Williams movie where she swam in the ocean with Jerry the Mouse from Tom and Jerry. Mm-hmm. His first sound film was 1929's Nothing But the Truth, which also starred Richard Dix. And in 1930, both him and Dix moved from Paramount to RKO. The following year, he received his first Oscar nomination for Cimarron, which won Best Picture that year, and it's actually considered one of the worst Best Pictures in Hollywood history. During production, Cron Jaeger utilized up to 27 cameras at once, especially during the very famous land rush scenes. In addition, he used over 2 million feet of film during the production, 250,000 of them during the land rush scenes alone, and he communicated with his cameraman through Army surplus field telephones. In 1937, he moved to the studio with which he would be most associated, 20th Century Fox. One of his first films he shot was Sonia Henney's screen debut, One in a Million, a collaboration that would continue over the next decade. In January of 1940, he again was named to the Rules Committee of AMPAS regarding the Oscar for Cinematography. He received 5 more Academy Award nominations in the 1940s. The first was for probably Sonia Henney's best movie, period. And yes, I've actually seen it, and it is really good, called Sun Valley Serenade. And Kronjager's work was also called excellent by several publications, including the American Cinematographer. He lost to Arthur Miller's work on How Green Was My Valley, and he shot one of the earliest film noirs called I Wake Up Screaming, starring Betty Grable and Victor Mature. And a recent review by Gary Giddens in the New York Sun called I Wake Up Screaming one of the most beautiful black and white movies ever made. The following year, he left Fox and resumed freelance cinematography. Before he went freelance, 2 of the films he shot at Fox garnered Oscar nominations, including To the Shores of Tripoli and The Pied Piper. He won neither, losing to Joseph Ruttenberg for Mrs. Miniver and Leon Shamroy, who we talked about last night with We're Not Married, for the color cinematography for The Black Swan. He manned the camera for the classic My Friend Flicka, starring Roddy McDowall, but it was his work on Heaven Can Wait which earned him his 5th Oscar nomination. D.W. Griffith called Kronjager's work in Heaven Can Wait the best color footage ever made. He would lose to Hal Moore and W. Howard Green for Phantom of the Opera. He filmed a dozen pictures during the first half of the 50s, culminating in another Oscar nomination, his 7th and final for 1954's Beneath the 12-Mile Reef, which featured his underwater photography using Aquaflex, a French underwater camera, his first use of CinemaScope underwater. His color work on the location shooting for the 1953 film Treasure of the Golden Condor was lauded as shame. In the 1950s and 1960s, stunning, excuse me. Yeah. He lost again to the guy who worked on Shane, but on the Treasure of the Golden Condor, his work was lauded as stunning. In the late 50s and 1960s, he also worked on several TV series, including Sea Hunt and Sam Peckinpah's The Westerner. In 1931, he married Ziegfeld showgirl Muriel Finley, but they divorced at the end of 1932. In the early 50s, Kronjager began to fall ill. While he continued to work for the remainder of the decade, the work became sporadic. The final picture he filmed was The Threat, and he died on June 15, 1960, 3 months before the release of his last film, The Devil's Partner, although he had filmed it 2 years earlier. Kronjager had been injured several weeks prior to his death while on the set of a picture where he had intervened to stop a fight between 2 stuntmen, although his death was listed as natural causes. So yeah, he shot many, many films since 1925. And see, going on to around Bloodhounds of Broadway, he also shot Desiree in 1954 for 20th Century Fox, starring Marlon Brando, as well as The Girl in the Lover's Lane for Brigadier Pictures in 1960. All right, now we are approaching the 1 minute and 9 minute mark of Bloodhounds of Broadway, where, of course, Mitzi Gaynor has finally professed her love for Scott Brady, and, of course, she has to confront his Moll right here, played by Marguerite Chapman. Yeah, both look absolutely stunning in this movie. They really do. Now, let me just see right here. I think that's about it as far as the cast is concerned. You know, it's funny, when I was looking in the cast list, there's supposed to be a quote unquote lady at the laundry, played by Mary Wicks. Yeah, who played a lot of roles over the course of decades, including the 1994 version of Little Women, She's supposed to be in here as basically a lady in the laundry, but I was not able to find her. So it's possible she might have been cut from the movie. So, but yeah, Mary Wicks is supposed to be in this movie as well as a quote unquote lady at laundry. So we are coming up on basically the last few segments of the movie, which includes some more song and dance numbers, including my personal favorite, which we still have yet to get through. But I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is, let me read some more of these comments real quick. Love to top shop. Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Yeah, just Stone Gas Man on Twitter. I found they looked at Joe Dante to direct The World Is Not Enough back in '99, along with Peter Medak and pre-Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson of all people. Yeah, Joe Dante. He was also supposed to direct the Phantom with Billy Zane, and he was eventually replaced. He probably would have made that movie a lot better, I think. But so we are coming up. We have about 18 minutes left to go. So I think I better go ahead and talk about the DVD here real quick. Okay, so this 20th Century Fox DVD of Bloodhounds of Broadway, it came out in 2007. Now, there's not a lot of reviews of this movie over at IMDb, although there was one that actually was wondering, like, well, why don't we have this movie on DVD? And I can't say for sure if this ever got a VHS release. I'm sure it did at some point. But when they released this on DVD in 2007, they 20th Century Fox actually did a pretty damn good job with this DVD. And even if they didn't release all of Mitzi Gaynor's movies on physical media that she did for the studio, at the very least, there are a couple where they're given a good treatment on DVD, although there are others that are not. And we'll get to those when we get to those. But this DVD right here, even though there is no audio commentary, well, I mean, first of all, I mean the picture looks great, the sound is great, and everything. I mean, there's even a restoration comparison where they actually showcase how they were able to digitally restore the movie and everything. And they even boasted in that featurette that they spent over 28 hours working on digitally restoring Bloodhounds of Broadway for this DVD. But credit where credit is due. They did a hell of a job. And even though there is no audio commentary on the DVD, there's plenty of other goodies. First to start, there is a featurette called A New York State of Mind, written by Damon Runyon, which is a 13.5-minute featurette where a university professor from Cornell actually comes on board and dubs Damon Runyon as, quote, the father of gangster chic and the kind of fast-talking, wise guy, glamorized New York City that, and it would feature characters and settings that would echo into many other things later, like everything from Goodfellas to Sex and the City. He even mentioned those right there in the featurette. And the truth of the matter is that, as I said earlier, Damon Runyon, his stories probably inspired about 20 films. And I was actually going to go over those films just real quick. I haven't seen Guys and Dolls since probably high school, so I can't really really give an adequate opinion on that. But the very first Runyon story to make it into a movie was actually Frank Capra's Lady for a Day in 1933, and it was adapted by Robert Riskin, who later won the Oscar for It Happened One Night, which Frank Capra also directed. But and it was also Lady for a Day was also remade as Pocketful of Miracles in 1961 with Betty Davis in the Apple Annie role. And Frank Sinatra recorded the upbeat title song, although his rendition was not used in the film. And it received Oscar nominations for composers Sammy Cahn and Jimmy Van Heusen, and for co-star Peter Falk for Best Supporting Actor. In 1989, Jackie Chan adapted the story yet again for the Hong Kong action film Miracles, adding several of his trademark stunt sequences. Also, other Runyon adaptations for the screen include Little Miss Marker, the 1934 film that made Shirley Temple a star and launched her career, and also pushed her past Greta Garbo as the nation's biggest film draw. Oh, wow. Subsequent remakes include Sorrowful Jones with Bob Hope and Lucille Ball, 40 Pounds of Trouble with Tony Curtis, and Little Miss Marker from 1980 with Walter Matthau, Julie Andrews, and Bob Newhart. Also on the Runyon list, we also have The Lemon Drop Kid in 1934, starring Lee Tracy, remade in 1951 with Bob Hope and William Frawley from I Love Lucy. We also have Princess O'Hara, Professional Soldier, A Slight Case of Murder with Edward G. Robinson, Joe and Ethel Turp and the President, The Big Street with Henry Fonda and Lucille Ball, adapted from the Runyon story Little Pinks, Butch Minds the Baby with Broderick Crawford and Shemp Howard, Johnny One Eye with Pat O'Brien, Money from Home with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and of course Guys and Dolls featuring Marlon Brando, Gene Simmons, Frank Sinatra, Vivian Blaine, and Stubby Kaye. Blaine and Kaye reprised their roles from the 1950 Broadway production, which that was on Broadway approximately 4 years after Runyon died. And it was adapted from the story The Idol of Miss Sarah Brown, and The Big Craps Game is adapted from the story called Blood Pressure. And then, of course, Bloodhounds of Broadway was actually remade in 1989. It was the only film for writer-director Howard Bruckner, who sadly died of AIDS shortly after the movie came out. And the movie completely bombed. The remake to Bloodhounds of Broadway completely bombed. Madonna even earned a Golden Raspberry Award nomination for Worst Supporting Actress, but lost to Brooke Shields for Speed Zone. And Bloodhounds of Broadway 1989 was Bruckner's only film, recut by the studio, and included Walter Winchell-esque narration was added. And 6 months following its theatrical release, the film was televised as a presentation of PBS's American Playhouse in 1990. But that film, it had Matt Dillon, Jennifer Grey, Julie Haggerty, Rutger Hauer, Madonna, like I said before, Anita Morris, and Randy Quaid. And it was actually distributed by Columbia Pictures. And it was filmed in New Jersey, Jersey City, and Montclair. But yeah, the 89 film completely bombed. And even though I don't remember watching the 1989 version, I do remember my father actually renting it on VHS back in 1990. I didn't watch it with him, but yeah, Bloodhounds of Broadway had that remake. Mm-hmm. Oh, and here we have oh yeah, Michael O'Shea is Inspector McNamara again. I was going to finish him up. In 1945, O'Shea returned to Broadway with a role in the revival of The Red Mill, and he had a supporting part in Mr. District Attorney in 1947 for Columbia, and he was Nancy Coleman's leading man in Violence at Monogram Pictures, and played Natty Bumppo in Sam Katzman's version of Last of the Mohicans, Last of the Red Men. And other films that he did include Man from Frisco, Circumstantial Evidence, It's a Pleasure, Parole Incorporated, The Threat, The Big Wheel, Chaplin China, and Bloodhounds of Broadway was actually his penultimate movie. His very last one was the 1954 film It Should Happen to You, directed by George Cukor and starring Judy Holliday and Peter Lawford and Jack Lemmon. So that was his last film after Bloodhounds of Broadway. So yeah, Mitzi is going to track Scott Brady over the whole country with her bloodhounds here. It's great. That's great. See, there he was at getting the massage, and now he's at a pier where he's gonna escape. Or oh no, he's gonna get there eventually. He's still hiding out at this hypnotist or whatever. Palm reader, excuse me. Whatever, same thing. No. I'm just hot. All right. So going back to the DVD, we also have an interview with Mitzi Gaynor for 17 minutes called Impressions of the Fox Years. And of course, she talks about her parents and, how her mother went to Chicago to become a flapper in the 20s. And she met her father, who was a Hungarian cellist. And talks about how, pronouncing Detroit as Detroit, and how she had plenty of dance experience and a connection with Sid Charisse, which brought her to Hollywood, where she was under contract to MGM. Sid Charisse was at the time. She did a show at 17 years old called The Great Waltz, Mitzi Gaynor did, and she was then approached by an agent, and she had done theater for 5 years, talked about Fox. She in this featurette on this DVD, she talks about all her Fox films except for 4. She doesn't talk about Take Care of My Little Girl, We Are Not Married, Down Among the Sheltering Palms, or 3 Young Texans. But she talks about all the other films she did, including South Pacific, of course. So that's actually the primary reason to pick up this DVD. But there's also another featurette here, a 7-minute featurette with Sharon Baird, who I mentioned earlier was the little girl that danced as fast as she could. And yes, she did indeed won a dancing contest when she was 6 years old. Before that, she had already learned ballet and tap dancing. Did the Colgate Comedy Hour on television. And after that, her legs got insured for $50,000. And she got the part in Bloodhounds of Broadway due to a question on her age. It's actually a very funny story. And so, yeah, those are the 3 featurettes. And then you also have a restoration comparison. 3 galleries. There are 3 galleries on here. There's a poster gallery, a lobby card gallery, and a still gallery, and also an interactive press book, which is very, very interesting. So you get to see how Fox had promoted the film back in day and how they were able to get spots made, where theaters would advertise the movies and everything. But what's also great about this DVD is that they included original lobby cards, which was actually really cool. Yeah, so there's Mitzi Gaynor and Mitzi Green, the 2 Mitzis right there. There's Mitzi dating okay, that's not Scott Brady, but yeah, she's basically dancing. But there she is with Scott Brady and Wally Vernon. Yeah, there's another one right there. So yeah, they provide 4 reproductions of lobby cards in this DVD. And like I said, I mean, I love the outfit that she wears here, the yellow and the plaid and everything. I mean, like I said, a very colorful movie, very, very colorful movie. It's like, oh no, oh no. The premonition was right. They were gonna die. But I was going to say, yeah, so we got about 5 minutes left. We got 5 minutes left of Bloodhounds of Broadway. And I was going to say, if you want to pick up this DVD, it is out of print. But you should be able to get copies at eBay. And I was going to check real quick what it's going for. But if you want a copy, you better get it now because it is long out of print. And who knows? I don't think Disney is ever going to give these movies any kind of streaming or anything like that. At this point, they're just basically keeping the Fox library locked up, which is you know it's wrong. It really is. I mean, and it's too bad because now all of Mitzi Gaynor's movies are in a state of limbo here. But yeah, if you want to get the DVD that Fox put out, and you could pick it up from eBay for you can get a used copy for $7.18, but that's the very last one. But you could also get the DVD, the 1989 remake on DVD as well. Okay, yeah, there's some copies here. They're all pretty much used copies for like $7. And if you were going to buy Bloodhounds of Broadway new, if you were going to pick up this movie new, it would only be $15. Okay, but yeah, make sure you get them before they disappear forever. So, and as I said before, I mean, I've already watched all of Mitzi's movies, and this is definitely in the top three. I'm not going to reveal my ranking right now, obviously, but yeah, it's obvious that this is going to be very, very high up there, especially considering I adore this final number right here. Now, lots of orange and turquoise. But yeah, dazzling number right here. Let's see. Oh yeah, the name of this song is Jack of Diamonds. Yeah, that's the name of it. Written by Ben Oakland and Paul Francis Webster, and sung and danced by Mitzi Gaynor. Just dazzling right here. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of reviews for Bloodhounds of Broadway. I mean, there's only 13 over at IMDb, but most of them are positive. Most of them are actually very positive. I mean, especially like this one right here. 10 out of 10. I love this movie. The music and comedy is superb. Mitzi's bubbly talents are showcased here. I would rate this movie right up there with Golden Girl, and I don't know why it hasn't been made available on DVD or VHS. So this was never released on VHS, from what I can gather here. Mitzi is a knockout in this movie and shows what a she shined like a rare talent. Yeah, absolutely. So most of these reviews are actually very positive for Bloodhounds of Broadway. But there's only a couple of external reviews, only a couple. But one that particularly stood out to me here was this one from Comet Over Hollywood in 2018. Hmm. Mitzi Gaynor is her usual energetic self and sells a song like no other. Her character is sweet, and Gaynor has put on a southern drawl. As a southerner, this bugs me, but because it's generally done badly. But Gaynor's accent didn't bother me at all. Uh, Hmm. So yeah, very little written about this movie, but fortunately, most of it is very positive. And perfect time to close with the Bloodhounds. The End, produced and released by 20th Century Fox Film Corporation. Thank you very much for joining me for Bloodhounds of Broadway, this little gem from 1952. Like I said, if you want to pick up the DVD, please do so. I mean, you can get a used copy for $7 on eBay, and you could also pick up a brand new copy for $15. But at any rate, thank you very much, John and Zachary, for joining me. And I will be back very, very soon for the next commentary, which will be on Down Among the Sheltering Palms from 1953 with Mitzi Gaynor. So thank you very much for joining me, and you all have a good night. Thank you.